Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Star Wars Alliance. Of course, I'm your host, Clay, and with me, like always, is I forgot to wear a Star Wars shirt. Katie
You know,
with a
I
Star
have
Wars shirt.
5 of them now, so I get to swap them around.
I technically only have three, so I have the Mandalorian. I
Mhm.
oh, hold on. Technical difficulties, everybody. Sorry about
Are
that.
you
I don't
good?
know. I can hear myself in a delay.
Oh, interesting. While Clay figures that out, I do wanna apologize, we are a little bit late, for everyone who's here live with us. Um, I and my brain, for some reason, decided to work on my setup 20 minutes before show started, um, and ran a little late because we were struggling to get a monitor base off. So that's my fault. I do apologize.
All right, so dummy me, I was talking to Nathan before the show and I left YouTube on, so I had an echo. So I apologize for that. And you won't even hear anything because of my podcast magic of editing. Either way,
Woot.
of course, we are going to be doing a review today. The Last Jedi. I understand that we did a review with me and Nathan a couple months ago. That was just because Katie was off on a vacation. More so, I think it may have been actually her honeymoon. But either way, we wanted to do this because we are very limited in our time of being able to release some reviews we may or may not have already done in regards to some books we have already finished that have not been released yet. Um, we do have some news on that later today as well, but also, uh, of course, before we jump into anything, we have our GUA network plugs. The Geek Ultimate Alliance network, of course, is just a giant podcast family that we are a part of. Star Wars Alliance is just one of 8 shows that are go across the entire 7 days a week on a weekly, bi-weekly, and even monthly schedule. Starting us off each week is, of course, Slice of Film and Ranger Alliance. So this week was Slice of Film with a slice of split with both me and Katie.
Which I forgot to promote again.
Hey, don't worry, it's an old episode, so it's very easy to forget about that old episode. But
I know.
Slice of Film also goes bi-weekly with Ranger Alliance, which me and Jake are going to be recording this weekend to be ready for you guys on Monday. Then, of course, we have DC Alliance, which me and Travis have put out our San Diego Comic Con predictions. There seems to be some news around that, and we will see what happens this weekend. But of course,
You know
after
what
that,
predictions Star Wars Alliance has for SDCC? Nothing.
zilch.
Because we're not coming. No, Star Wars isn't coming. No, I just
And
had to
then
say that. I'm not exactly mad about it because Star Wars Celebration gave us a lot. So,
it did give us a whole lot. But of course, we also have superhero discussions, Star Wars Alliance, Marvel Alliance, which seems to have a big panel coming up in San Diego Comic Con, but maybe not a whole lot of announcements. It's very weird, all this news that's coming around. But also, of course, a walk through the multiverse, and of course, World's Finest True Believers. Now, this show, Star Wars Alliance, as well as DC and Marvel, all go live on separate days of the week. DC being Monday, Star Wars being Wednesday, of course, we're today, and Marvel on Thursday. So there will be a special panel on the Geekverse YouTube channel with the Geekverse guys and Marvel coming around, talking about everything the Marvel has. If the rumors of Cavill is happening, I might just crash the party and talk about it. I don't know. Uh, you know, Snell doesn't listen to Star Wars Alliance, so he will never see it coming. So that'll be fun. But of course, those shows do go live on their separate days. DC going at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, here at Star Wars Alliance at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and Marvel at 9:10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Those three shows also have their own separate solo feeds if you would like to listen to those separately on any podcatcher of choice, or you could just stay right here with us at the GUA and listen to everything. But the GUA also is an ad supported network as well as a listener supported network. So you will get ads in this show. What that means is basically you'll get ads. Easy as that. If you don't want ads, you can always join us here on the YouTube channel. Easy. Just go to youtube.com/geekverse. Of course, you could just press that notification button. Make sure the bell is on all so you know exactly when we are going live every single time. But if you don't want ads and you don't want to be here live with us because we do go live a little bit earlier than the rest of the guys, you can always join our Patreon. $1 tier just says thank you, while $5 gives you the exclusive content as well as the show's ad free. I am pretty sure, pretty confident, because I have looked at it recently. Star Wars Alliance does have Katie's comic book conversations episode
I haven't
2.
uploaded it yet. I'm gonna upload it tonight. I promise, y'all. I
Oh,
know. I have been dealing with a days long migraine. A days long migraine, y'all. I kid you not. Like it has been absolutely terrible. So I'm sorry.
I I I have gotten to the point, Katie, where I have just dealt with the fact that I am getting old. And so right here at my desk, I have my very own ibuprofen. I have a bottle of ibuprofen in the bathroom as well as right next to my bed. I have ibuprofen in every room, and I don't know what that says about me, but I just know, hey, if I have a headache, I just pop some pills, Easy as that. Or
I
I have some
have
cider here with
um
me.
I have $1,000 migraine medication that I currently get for free, so I hope that never changes. Because my insurance won't cover it. So I took one of those and then it still didn't go away, so I took a leave and yeah, I've taken a lot of drugs over the past couple days. Legal drugs,
I
but
was about to say,
drugs.
kids, if you learn anything from this podcast, it is don't overdose on drugs, people. Anyway,
Yes, exactly.
comic
And
book
Nate, I'm
conversations
glaring
will
at
be
you with
coming
your
back.
comment over here.
Comic book conversations will be coming back soon. The next episode of For the First Time, episode 4 of Game of Thrones, should be coming up this weekend. Heinz has his top fives coming up. I don't know what his next one will be. Joe, of course, has his multiverse minutes, as well as Chris and Brent having their We Can Watch This All Day. I don't know if they have announced their next one yet, but I do know Thor has already been published. So go listen to that if you are subscribed to our Patreon. Remember, $5 gives you that exclusive content. Anyway, that is it. We do have, I wouldn't necessarily call it news. Um, I
Several
will,
like small pieces of news.
yeah, just some small stuff. I will say this. We have kind of hinted at it before. Um, and of course, the lovely people that we have been in contact with have given us the opportunity to read some books early. So I will say this, because I've seen advertisements for the release date, not the embargo yet. Padawan has been read and recorded, and it is in the queue to be edited. So I
It
haven't
is in the
edited that one.
queue.
What?
It is in the queue. We can't say anything yet, but
We can't say
it's been
anything.
done.
We have thoughts on it. I will say this. I enjoyed the book for what it was. It promised one thing, and it gave us that one thing. So
Yep.
I will say that much, and then zip. But one piece of news that I want to go ahead and go by, because you posted it in our chat and like everybody was going all steamy and hotness for it. We got our first excerpt for the Princess and the Scoundrel.
Second excerpt. This is the second excerpt.
This is the second one. Oh, what was the first one?
We've talked about this already. It's like the first chapter. is what the first excerpt was, and then
Okay,
this is
okay,
like
okay.
chapter 5, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah. It's like 4 or 5.
Yeah. But man, everybody got horny on Maine. I love Star Wars Twitter when we're horny on Maine. Like, I love
So,
it.
okay, so this kind of line that Han throws out there, and yes, we're gonna go ahead and talk about it because it's literally a like if it was on screen, it would have been a less than 30-second moment, but that moment would have lasted a lifetime. Holy shit. Um So, I think it is Han who says, "I want you," and Leia's like, "For what?" And he on the dot, like a drop of a dime, just says, "Forever." And I was like, "Whoo, I'm getting a little toasty in here. It's a little spicing up a little bit."
It's getting
I will say this. I will say this. I have passed that moment. Because of course we have had the opportunity to have Princess and the Scoundrel in our possession. I will say two things because again, lips locked. We can't say anything about it. That moment was just as hot as it seemed on
yeah.
Twitter. I will say that. And then I will say this chapter 7. I nearly cried my balls out, my freaking
Right?
my eyeballs out. It was just so beautiful, and there's just something that happens that got like a little lump in my throat. But we will talk all about that. We are planning to record soon about that book. But we've already said this. We are getting more and more content so
Mhm.
quickly. We even saw like what is it? It's not even like we have a month and 11 days for
Yeah.
Andor.
Yeah.
Insane.
I can't believe it. And we did get some new footage for Andor, y'all, that is out there. I personally didn't watch it because I'm like, okay, I've seen enough. I'm hyped for it. I'm ready. And there's a couple new stills coming. Diego, oh my gosh, the star, Andor himself, said that he didn't ever think that he was ever going to get another chance to play Andor, and he was really happy that he did. So there's a couple interviews out there, um, which we're allowed to talk about with the Last Jedi, though. So, but those interviews are out there. Also, happy 100th script to Mr. Charles Soule out there, like one
I
of
was wondering
the
what was
comic
the
legends.
occasion. I have not read that article yet. I skimmed through it, but I was wondering why it was such a big deal. And I didn't realize 100 scripts for
Yep.
Star Wars. That's insane. Of course, this has to go through all of the stuff as far as High Republic stuff, through Darth Vader, Crimson Dawn, Lando, everything that he has done with Star Wars. And that's great. That's amazing. I hope he does stay on for however long he wants to, because I think
Yep.
he does put a really nice touch on the stories of Star Wars. I really do enjoy them.
Yeah, he said he's on like 123 now with just everything he's done, and just the way it worked out that this isn't technically the 100th issue he's had published, but that it just this was the 100th script he wrote, and he wanted to kind of mark the occasion. Um, and it has 4 short stories in it that include Obi-Wan and Anakin, Darth Vader and Sidious, and then the it piggybacks kind of on Kylo Ren, as well as a Poe Dameron story, which is a eulogy for Snap. And y'all, I cried during the Poe Dameron one. Poe Dameron's the only one of his other than the Obi-Wan Kenobi, because I just got Obi-Wan Kenobi and Anakin. So I haven't read that one yet. But Poe Dameron, everyone has said that that's an excellent run that he did with that one. So I'm excited by that one. But that one made me cry.
It was a very nice touch, and we are actually going to be talking about that when we are finished with our news. And I don't believe is there anything else that we need to really talk about other than the book itself?
Oh, Clay, 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 Clay. No, yeah, there's not a whole lot. It looks like a there's a leaked Star Wars poster out there that it looks like it's in Spanish, and it
Yes.
has Andor, Obi-Wan Kenobi, The Mandalorian, but it also has the Book of Boba Fett, and it says Temporada 2 muy pronto, and that means season 2 coming soon. So,
So, okay, we know that, again, spoilers for Book of Boba Fett if you haven't watched it. If you haven't, I don't know what you're doing. Either way, we know that at the end of the last episode of the Book of Boba Fett, there was several things that happened. One being the infamous kind of scratching of the head moment of, is Boba Fett really leaving Tatooine as the daimyo? You know,
yeah,
because he was like, maybe we aren't really cut out for this kind of thing. But we also saw the post credit scene, and usually, usually, post credit scenes mean that there is something that is going to come after, and
yeah.
I would think that the Book of Cobb Vanth, exactly, exactly,
Welcome to the
as
chat, S
folks.
Bubs.
But like, does that mean that there's going to be a passing of the torch to Cobb Vanth? Is there going to be a actual power struggle between the two of them? Like
Yeah,
we don't know, but I think they were able to leave the door open enough for there to be a legitimate reason for there being a season 2. What do you think?
yeah. I think so as well. Um, especially since I mean I think it was one of the cheapest shows to be made currently on Disney Plus. So it wasn't like the best. Nathan, you were already here. I'm sorry. We've been mentioning you. Welcome to the chat, Nathan. um, like it was average, but as we've talked about, I think Star Wars needs to be okay with being average. So
Yes,
I think that's a good one to put out that still provides content, and it could be a well explored show.
I think so as well. I think that, like I said, they did leave the doors open, and who knows? Like, I know people will probably be upset at it, but like, of course, we may see Din Djarin come back. Have a couple of his episodes, because again, the way they're telling these stories is not Marvel esque, but it is an interconnective story between the times of course, Return of the Jedi and Force Awakens.
Yeah.
So we could see a lot of storytelling elements in the fact that these are interweaving. We may see Boba Fett again in Mandalorian season 3. You know,
I think it's completely possible in both because Boba Fett is going to have to help Din Djarin explore who he is as a Mandalorian and help him recognize that his cult of Mandalore is not the only way to be a Mandalorian, because I think Bo-Katan is just going to be too brutal with everything to really help that come across to Djarin properly. So
for sure.
the last bit of news we have is for Zynga, which is producing Star Wars Hunters. And now originally that game was supposed to be coming out this year. This is, of course, a game delay announcement. And that they want to, let me see. They
The
understand game
the
delays are frustrating. Top priority is ensuring players will have the best experience in the arena. If people are participating in the beta launch for Star Wars Hunters, then they will continue to be a part of I said beta. It's soft launch, excuse me.
Yeah,
So
but
yeah, that's about it.
the one thing that I hated about this is uh I hate how small they made this post in the lettering, because I
Yeah.
literally just scrolled past it. I had to, on my phone, I had to open the photo and then zoom in on a couple things.
Yeah.
It is very tiny. But again, this was originally posted for 2021. or rumored for 2021. They made the delay to 2022, and now moving it to 2023. This shouldn't be new to anybody within the gaming realm for the last 2 years. And the only reason why I say that is because, of course, we have the new gen consoles that have still very hard to get your hands on. And so people are still getting those, and we're still treating, they're not new gen because we've had the PS5 and the Xbox Series S for what I feel like may be going on 3 years now, but people are still trying to get their hands on it, like I said. So you kind of have to treat it as like their first years. So you still want to get these new eyes on these newer games. So they're going to push it, make a big deal out of it. That's fine. That time gives them the ability to make the game better anyway. So I'm okay with this. It would have been fun to play this year, but I can understand the reasoning why they're pushing.
Yeah, definitely. And as long as they're taking care of the developers, like that's my main concern nowadays with the gaming industry is just making sure that the developers aren't having to spend 80-hour, 120-hour weeks to try and push these games out.
Hmm.
Because that just sucks and that is not a way to treat the people who work for you at all. And that's not a good way to keep people around. Um, Programming in general is becoming a more lucrative job industry. And so if you treat your employees like shit, they're gonna go somewhere else. So I just hope that they're working towards that because obviously Lego Skywalker Saga was a shitstorm and it's not even that good. So
I I mean, I wouldn't go that far. We had a lot of fun that first launch week and
okay,
everything else.
the open worldness is fun and story mode, while a little frustrating, was fun. But some of my best memories from Lego Star Wars is the free play where you can go back and you're still trying to work those puzzles and doing them with different characters and just kind of seeing how things work. Going through levels now with free play is literally 45 seconds
Yeah.
because they skip because you've already solved this puzzle, you don't have to do it again.
Yeah.
And I find that a little frustrating.
I mean, you could always start completely new, but that's just a headache. So I completely understand your reasoning for sure.
Well, and like I really wanted to do some of these levels with Ahsoka and kind of like I wanted to fight Darth Vader with Ahsoka. Like
Hmm.
because they don't have Rebels, they don't have Clone Wars levels. Like so that would have been really cool to do, but it's not really like a thing
Yeah.
because it's not worth the effort.
Yeah. I understand that. I understand that. But I'm really curious because, again, Nathan's here in the chat. He had his, of course, I will say, eye rolling response to the topic of today's discussion. But I will say, because he also commented, Clay, Shadow of the Sith was excellent. So he has finished it.
Yes.
Nathan, I will go ahead and say this. A lot of our conversation today will be looking back at Shadow of the Sith and how it is so relevant to this movie right here.
Before
So,
we do that, however, I did forget one thing because the original tweet I sent in the Star Wars Alliance chat got deleted. Podathon, which is a Star Wars podcasting fundraiser for Make a Wish, will be coming September 17th, and the stream starts at 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and you can find all the details on thepodathon.com. But that's going to feature podcasters such as Star Wars Explained, Tarkin's Top Shelf, I think it's Around the Galaxy podcast, the Bombad cast, Coffee with Kenobi, Arc2 Radio, Serving Pink Milk, Kanata's Castle, Tatooine Sons, the Night Sisters podcast, Followers of the Force podcast. I can't read that one. I'm sorry. Is that Broaxium? I think that's Broaxium. Father Son Galaxy podcast and What's Glub. So those are all the podcasts that are being featured during that stream. And I know last year they had some Star Wars authors come on and put things up for people to donate to. But that is a really good opportunity to kind of get involved while listening to some people geek out over some Star Wars. So if you can support them that day, they do also currently have their donate now up on their Twitter, which is at the Potathon. So
Awesome. Looking forward to that for sure. Oh, S-Bubs also says, haven't rewatched The Last Jedi since release, but I just watched Scream 5, where a major point of the story is that true fans react to an eighth film in a long running series directed by the Knives Out guy. That's actually kind of funny.
I have heard that. I am not a horror movie person, so I have not watched any of the Scream movies. And I refuse to. So yeah, that is my answer. But
I
before we get into
I
the
think
Last
I've
Jedi,
only seen Scream 3, I think.
that's like Matt is where he's like, oh yeah, like I've seen bits and pieces of 5. I've seen bits and pieces of 7. I think I've seen some of 2. This is when I was having to figure out how many Star Wars movies he'd watched before I would go out with him. So
Nice.
he watched all the Star Wars movies before then because The Last Jedi, fun fact, was actually our first date. So
Yeah, I think you've shared that on the podcast.
yeah. He's correcting me on Discord. Parts of 1, all of 3, and some of 5. Excuse me. I apologize.
So, where do you want to start with your retrospective of The Last Jedi?
Well, we're gonna do the 25th comic for Star Wars,
Oh,
right?
that's right. That's right. Instead of The Last Jedi. Well, no. Before The Last Jedi is what I should say. Before The Last Jedi, we are going to be reviewing, of course, the Star Wars 25, which is, like we said before, just like a fun kind of anniversary issue for Star Wars. Has 4 different stories. Um, I will be completely honest, none of them really hit me as much as the first one did, but the Kylo Ren story became so much more relevant after I watched this movie.
I know, right? Because it's just like you see it and you're like, oh my gosh. And especially seeing Ossus in that story where he's just kind of going through and is looking at everything. He goes to Alfrona, which is heavily featured in Soul's current Star Wars run, I believe, because um, that was where Luke found his yellow lightsaber that he has between episodes 5 and 6. And so he's looking and trying to figure out, like, he's haunted by Luke Skywalker at this point, I guess.
Yeah, and since we're already jumping into it, I was very confused by the title of this story. So the story of Kylo Ren is titled See You Around, Kid.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't understand that until I rewatched The Last Jedi today, where the literal last words that Luke Skywalker says to Kylo Ren was "See you around, kid," and then he disappears. I really enjoyed this part.
Yep.
It's of the comic. I mean, it's a very short read. It's literally maybe just 4 or 5 pages, but it does give you so much weight of how much Kylo really does hate Skywalker
Mm-hmm.
and what that really means for him moving forward to when we eventually see the rise of Skywalker. Um, I wasn't too fond of the art, to be completely honest. There's one moment where like he is like screaming and his head just like looks really, really long.
Yeah, I can see that. A cool thing about this though is about this issue in particular is Star Wars was able to get all of the original artists back for each
Yes.
run.
Yes.
So this is the art that's featured in the Rise of Kylo Ren um mini series. So I can definitely see that. That's about the only like panel because it's not like the full page. It's just that panel where the art looks a little funky to me. So
Yeah, that's
that's
really
what,
the only negative that I have on that story for sure.
yeah. Um, let's go ahead and talk about the eulogy of Snap Wexley. Which Snap is Wedge Antilles' stepson, for those who aren't aware. And he's a pilot with Poe, and he is shown to crash onto one of the Star Destroyers at the Battle of Exegol. Um, and we were all kind of really sad about that because I was excited to see Wedge Antilles and Snap like unite on screen together and kind of like share a bonding moment to like further emphasize their relationship from the books, I guess, because he doesn't mention Antilles at all in the
Yeah.
movies. So uh, it would have been cool to see, but I guess the actor, which I can't ever remember his name for the life of me, but he's J.J. Abrams' like best friend.
Yeah.
Um, and he's in all of J.J. Abrams stuff. So I understood if he didn't want to come back to the franchise, then you just kind of do that. Or if somebody had to die, then that's the case. But this was a really it made me cry because yeah, it was sad.
I know that you have a little bit more of a connection with the pilots of Star Wars. I do not, not so much. This was a nice story though. Um I do like how I can't remember who this is. Um the journalist in this story, she didn't necessarily act like she didn't act in the moment. As and what I mean by that is you can sometimes get in the moment and
Mm,
unfortunately overstep some boundaries and be sentimental in a moment that you really shouldn't because you don't know the individual. This person did not do that whatsoever. And I really appreciate that. She didn't step over anybody. She's just like, hey, I didn't know the person, but from what I heard, he did this, this, and this. I only met him once, and I could probably write a 10,000 page or a
mm.
10,000 word piece on him. Uh, I did think about this. I don't know if this necessarily takes place after Rise of Skywalker
So
or
yes, it does. And on the page after the cover, on the page after the cover, you can kind of see Obi-Wan and Anakin is set between episodes 1 and 2, and this is set after episode 9. So it tells
so
you where it's set.
this is, I believe, the first Star Wars piece of content to take place after the sequel trilogy.
Oh, you're right. Oh my gosh. Because because
Because in the stories of Jedi and Sith, there's a story of Poe Dameron and Rey that takes
right.
place before Rise of Skywalker, but
Yep.
after The Last Jedi. And I believe there is also a comic which you have in your hand.
Yeah, this is Poe Dameron 5. And
Yeah.
this takes place um between it looks like between um episode 8 and 9. So,
Yeah. So although it's
'cause yeah,
only a few pages long, oh yeah,
there's
yeah, yeah.
Snap right there.
Although this is only a few pages long, it is legitimate the only content that we have Star Wars wise that is after the Rise of Skywalker. And I thought that was kind of cool.
Yeah, I didn't even put that together. But you're completely right. So I'm interested to see kind of if this is a first step into moving towards that. But I also wonder if Star Wars was if the story group was just like, yeah, sure, I'll let you have this.
Like,
because
and even
they
even
want to
at
keep Soul around.
for like even the saying after episode 9, they could literally mean after that party they had at the very end, you know?
Yeah, they totally could. Though I like that everyone is dressed in like the orange jumpsuits. It's
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, we just got out of prison. No, they're totally piloting suits, but um no, I liked everyone in here. And obviously is it Jessica? Jessica is the spouse, or is it Karen? No, it's Kare. Excuse me. I'm sorry. I got it wrong. Kare is Snap's spouse, so I liked that it kind of dove into those emotions. Um, but going up to the first two stories in this, which are both titled The Lesson, you said these impacted you the most kind of out of this issue.
Yeah, and not so much the second one because I will be completely honest, the Sidious Vader story was really really quick, and although it was a lesson for Vader, it was really a non-lesson. Um it was just kind of doubling down on what Obi-Wan had said in the first story. And the reason why this is something that I really appreciate is this is a story about how Anakin is always the what's the correct terminology for this? He is always thinking outside the box when it comes to, I guess, ingenuity, maybe would be his characteristic.
Yeah.
And so he asks Obi-Wan, "Hey, why lightsabers? Like, out of anything that we could use, why lightsabers?" Because he mentions lightsabers are powered by kyber crystals, and kyber crystals can really just power anything if we really wanted them to. Death Star. Um, but he says, "Oh, we could have kyber blasters, we could have kyber whatever." And Obi-Wan says, "Well, you're absolutely right. We could do all of that stuff. But anybody can shoot a blaster. Anybody can pick up a gun, a blaster, and shoot it. And that is that. A saber, a sword, is intentional. It is to the point. So he makes the point to say, when you are fighting with a lightsaber, when you make a wound, or if you kill somebody with a lightsaber, it is intentional. You have made that decision because you have to get so close with a lightsaber."
Yeah.
And that goes along with the story that he told about him pitching this idea to Qui-Gon Jinn, which is the equivalent of like, oh shit, I forgot what the correct terminology is. But it's like in the Japanese heritage, they have like this chain with like a kunai stuck,
Nunchuck.
like
It's
almost like
a
a
nunchuck
nunchuck.
type thing.
Yeah. And he pitched this idea to Qui-Gon, and Qui-Gon's like, "Yeah, that looks really cool, and that might, get you somewhere, but it's not really efficient to what we as protectors are doing because that looks like a weapon to kill. That looks like a weapon to hurt, while a Jedi with a lightsaber is meant to be seen as somebody with a weapon to protect and keep peace, you
Yeah.
know? So I really appreciated this story. I thought it was very good. I thought it was a very well told story, especially in the eyes of like Obi-Wan telling this lesson to Anakin Skywalker. And I think it was supposed to be a little bit cheeky and on the nose about how uh at one point Anakin is naming all these things that you could make with a kyber crystal, and uh he says here you could build a kyber spear, a kyber blaster. Even I was thinking about it, and I bet I could even build a, and then it cuts off. And I think they were being a little cheeky and on the nose about building a like weapon as big as the Death Star. I think that's what he
Yeah.
was like, and more so, it's almost like the entire story of Age of Ultron and Marvel, the MCU,
Yeah.
trying to build a what's the terminology that Tony Stark uses in that movie? Uh, of course, it's like a shield around the world or something like that, or a piece of armor around the
Yeah.
world. I think that's kind of the idea that Anakin probably would have thought of. And it was like, "Oh, nobody needs to hurt like I hurt with me and my mother if we build this giant thing to protect everybody." But then he learns this lesson. And then when he learns the lesson via Sidious in our second story, because the one of the big counterpoints that Anakin says to Obi-Wan, because Obi-Wan is like, "Oh, we're the Jedi. We use lightsabers, blah blah blah." And Anakin was like, the Sith use lightsabers too. What's your defense against that?" He's like, "You know," he says, "I like to think that the Sith think that they can do everything better than we can. So that's why they use lightsabers." And I'm not entirely sure if that is true, but this lesson that Sidious teaches Vader is basically like, stop thinking like a Jedi and start thinking like you have power,
Yeah.
because that's what this lightsaber is. It's power. Um, and I didn't notice this before until just now because I have it on my screen while we're talking about this. Darth Vader's lightsaber is gold. What is that about?
Um, so remember Sidious had so at the beginning this story is set to be shortly after episode 3, which is when Soul's Run takes place. So I would imagine this is before Darth Vader got his kyber crystal and rebuilt his saber. So and remember
Ah,
Sidious has two blades. So I imagine he's just lending one for practice.
okay, okay, that makes total sense.
Because um because the one that or actually I think both of them are slightly curved. So yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's one that's curved and then there's one that's not. And I think actually, now that I think about it, the one that is not curved or the one that is curved, I wonder if that's Count Dooku's lightsaber that he took and managed to
Oh,
get away
he would
from
have
at the
had it.
beginning of
Yeah,
Revenge of the Sith.
he would have
Because
still had it. Yeah.
yeah, and like managed to sneak it away from the Jedi because Anakin picks it up and uses it to chop Dooku's head off. But you could also Sidious could have stolen it.
I could see that. I could totally see that. Um, but yeah, I said this to you before we started recording. This was a very quick read. Um, I think it's a little bit of a fun piece of lore if anybody wants to go grab it. Of course, it came out today, the day that
Yep.
we are recording this. So just go to your local comic book shop if you have one and go purchase it. It's Star Wars number 25. And of course, if you don't have a local comic shop available to you anywhere close, you can always go to Comixology and purchase it that way as well. But yeah, it was a really fun read.
Yeah, I thought so too.
All right, now let's move on to The Last Jedi. So
Yes.
I said this, and Nathan, he is really big on his opinions on The Last Jedi, but he loved Shadow of the Sith. And I was watching this movie again, kind of thinking back on the conversations we were having with, of course, Adam Christopher, our review, and of course, the contents of the book of the Shadow of the Sith, because I'm still listening to it in my car rides. And I genuinely think that Shadow of the Sith, I think, oh, you got the red pages.
I did. It finally came in. I just wanted to show it. That was it.
So I genuinely think that Shadow of the Sith makes you appreciate this movie a little more, as well as the trilogy as a whole. But I will go ahead and say this: I don't think you should listen or read Shadow of the Sith until after you watch the sequel trilogy. Because I
I think
don't. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I think so as well. Um, now, and you can kind of go back and forth and go, oh yeah, but I want to look at everything chronologically and whatnot. But there's not enough context currently with the canon timeline as a whole to really tell you enough about Dathan and Miramir without knowing about the sequel trilogy.
Yeah.
So I think that's the way you have to approach it. But it was a very interesting to go through. And I know Nathan says it makes him appreciate the Rise of Skywalker more. But I think he just doesn't want to love The Last Jedi and is like, no.
Well,
So
so the reason why I say that it makes me appreciate The Last Jedi a lot more is let's jump ahead real quick because I really want to hear your thoughts on this conversation that Ray and Luke have. This whole, oh, you failed, or Luke thinking he failed Kylo while Ray thinks that Kylo failed him, and then she puts a giant weight on his shoulders. Oh well, I won't fail you. The galaxy could really use a
yeah.
legend right now. Like hearing this conversation with now a new pair of eyes in the sense of having the knowledge of Shadow of the Sith in my head, like that is not really okay. And there's a reason why he and I think it's funny that he says at one point in this movie, "Oh, there's a reason why I went into one of the most I guess he said one of the most, but he says one of the most isolated planets in the galaxy." And in my mind I was like, "Is it really? Because you still haven't been on Exegol." You know? You know.
Yes.
But I
He's been on it
think
metaphorically.
but I do think with, we did get the badass Luke and the fun Luke and like the very like connected with the Force Luke in Shadow of the Sith. Here, I do think the weight that Luke had, because he still had that weight on his shoulders in Shadow of the Sith, I think it does show you a little bit more in that book what he was going through in order to get to this point in the Last Jedi.
Yeah. I think so because that's the next time you see him right after Shadow of the Sith is the Last Jedi, when it's technically Force Awakens, whatever you want to say. Um, but it's so hard because I love the Last Jedi and the interpretation that it brings to Star Wars while allowing itself to kind of be in its own sphere. And you can argue all day long that the sequel trilogy was the most disjoint storytelling way to do it, and I agree. That's not a way to do a trilogy. I can completely agree. Sequel trilogy is the worst trilogy, but Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker are two of my favorite Star Wars movies. And Ryan Johnson just brings such a unique take and allows it to just take off like wildfire. With all the different metaphors on hope and allowing the most important thing about this is allowing your heroes to make mistakes and being able to come back from those, because like you could think compared to Shadow of the Sith, Luke could be thinking all day long on Octu, I shouldn't have gone on so many missions. I should have taken Ben with me on those missions. Maybe I could have protected him. And he's just thinking about all these things. But I love the quote from Yoda so much when he's talking to him when Luke is trying to burn the tree, and he's like, "Failure's our greatest teacher," and that's really what it is. You learn more by failing
Yeah.
than by doing it right. And it's just it's such a good quote to have in this movie that's about failure, but also recovering from that failure and recognizing you made a mistake and you have to recover from that. So I love this movie.
I love it too. This movie did what I feel like was needed for the Star Wars franchise. Like we always said, it started this ever so small branch of, hey, there could be more than just the Skywalkers out there. Um,
Mhm.
the whole idea of Canto Bight, the idea of uh there being people who feed both the good guys and the bad guys. I
Because
love
that's
that.
absolutely true. It's absolutely true. Tony Stark thought that he was just feeding the good guys, and then came around and was like, "Oh, we're actually feeding the bad guys too. Oh shit!" Like,
Well, yeah, and not only that, but you look at the High Republic, and before the huge, overthrowing of like the dark side and the Sith, being everywhere, we had the Nihil and people who weren't force sensitive. And you think of, okay, people like this at Canto Bight, they could easily, easily just, and they're throwing chaos into the galaxy and reaping the benefits from it. And I think that within itself can be a really good story for Star Wars. Again, we've always had the debate, can the general audience be able to view Star Wars stories without lightsabers and stuff? And we've said, oh well, they watch Mandalorian, so they could easily watch something like that. And I think it could have gone so good if people just didn't get super butthurt at the fact that freaking Mark Hamill is 60 plus years old and can't be this amazing acrobatic hero that he was in Return of the Jedi.
yeah. And he's 70, by the way. I looked it up. He's the same age as Keaton.
Yeah, exactly. Just gonna keep my mouth shut, but the people who watch or listen to this, exactly what me and Katie are talking about. But
um, no, okay. So kind of hitting the front part of this, we pick up right after The Force Awakens. Rey has taken off to go find Luke, and the Resistance is having to evacuate the base. So this is probably my biggest issue with The Last Jedi is we're always told that hyperspace travel takes time, and it can be a blink of an eye, but it can also be several hours.
yeah,
So how much time actually passes to get the First Order to Ahanklas?
uh, I never really thought about it, to be completely honest. I just like, and again, I don't do what most of the GOA thinks you should do when you watch just any random movie, which is turn off your brain. You can't turn off your brain in movies, people. It's literally impossible. But when with story beats like that, like I almost have to throw the idea of like it's Star Wars, you know? And I know it's an excuse. I know it's an excuse. But I feel like you kind of have to, because
Well, and Matt
otherwise
will
you
all the time
overanalyze it, you know?
Matt will all the time when we're watching, he'll go, "Well, we shouldn't be seeing fire there. We shouldn't be seeing XYZ there." And
Exactly. It's
I'm
space. You shouldn't see an explosion.
but I'm like, I can excuse that because they've never said specifically, like in a book or in a comic, "Oh yeah, fire doesn't happen. Fire happens in the comics, fire happens in the books in space." Like, 'cause it's an explosion, it happens. What they have clarified previously is that hyperspace travel takes time. So,
Yes.
in universe storytelling, that's what bugs me.
Okay, I guess you're right there. I guess you're right, because they've, especially in High Republic and in some other books that we've read recently, they've talked about the actual time it takes for hyperspace. Um, but yeah, no, I always just like, especially when you get into this movie, especially in the very beginning, you're kind of just like in the heat of the moment where it's like, okay, Poe just like flies up to Hux. It's kind of intense. We all know they're trying to escape. What's happening? Like, like I understand the logic. I understand me as somebody who is then forgetting everything about the entertainment business, thinking, okay, how is this scientifically possible? Yeah, I understand this movie can literally just fly out the window and but at that point, you can't make sense of it. But I think that is the excuse I will give, is that it's supposed to be an intense moment to make you not think about those like small details, you know?
Right. And I mean, in universe storytelling, it's the same thing with Leia. I mean, we've seen people like be outside in space with just a rebreather. When she flies through space, that didn't bug the crap out of me. I was like, "Oh my gosh, she's flying." Like, "Yay."
Yeah.
Um and everyone else was just like, you can't do that. Space would kill you like instantly. But like we've seen people with just rebreathers on walk around space. It's not good, obviously, but
But she is also force sensitive. And so
mhm,
for me, I just like, oh, she used the force to protect her in space and she was able to get back to the ship. Like that's immediately what I thought of.
yeah, I did too. And that might not have been like super clear to a lot of people because before this, Leia wasn't really like talked about in terms of force sensitivity. Everyone kind of like knew she had like inklings of it when it came to like Luke's being present. But before this is like her really first big display of power. And I like how they expanded on that in The Rise of Skywalker with actively showing that Leia was training with Luke before she like sensed the future and knew if she followed the path, then her son would die. So,
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Uh but from there, we do get how do you okay, so I don't think I've ever asked you about this before, and we've gotten it I guess in smaller doses with the Disney Plus shows for sure. Or at least it's not so like, hey, this is a joke, but the humor in Star Wars. How do you feel about it? Because this moment where Poe Dameron is like, "Oh, I'm trying to get a hold of General Hugs," pale white dude, kind of lanky, and it goes on
I
for a while. How do you feel about just I guess not only the this moment, but just in general the humor of Star Wars?
I love it because I think if you're gonna critique that, then you have to critique Han going back, "Oh yeah, we're fine. We're fine. How are you?" You have to critique that too because those are the kind of lines that just help you alleviate a little bit of the stress. And obviously, the whole resistance is very stressed right now, and Poe has to let that out in some way, shape, or form. And this is the way he chooses to let it out. I like I love it. And like I know that moment has gotten so much commentary on it, but just like seeing it again on screen, I told Matt, I was like, "I don't care what anyone says. I love this. It's great."
Yeah, I this moment it felt like it went longer than I first initially remember it going, but I think that I kind of have the same like I know that my family doesn't like me very much for it, but when I was a child and I knew I was getting in trouble for something, I basically had that same kind of like, "Oh, I'm in trouble for what? Oh, I didn't know that. I didn't know I couldn't do that." And kind of playing the smartass of it. I can understand how relatable that is, and to find that in a character, I think that's very important. So,
Mhm.
I do appreciate it. but there's that moment. I don't know exactly what he is loading on his ship. I remember seeing the green barn and it going it fully loaded or whatever. Um, but then he punches it and basically gets the entire fleet to start attacking. When we see Rose's sister in the very beginning of this movie and seeing her uh drop down and kick the ladder, I got so upset at this moment because I understand there's a lot of slow motion moments, so it's supposed to show you that this is like a blink and you miss it type of moment. And although the film is treating it like this, stopping time type of moment where she's kicking, she's trying to get the remote. I feel like she could have gotten up and went up that ladder before she had gotten shot down.
Maybe I like it's a big moment and you kind of have to you're talking about Rose's sister, right?
Yes, yes.
Well, I think the big issue is that she was probably very stunned from the ladder, if not several ribs were broken. And so probably she poured all the energy she had into kicking that thing.
True, true. And I think it was
Plus
just
they
my
were over the sweet
frustration.
spot, so she knew she had to do it relatively quickly.
Yeah. I think that I was just more frustrated at the fact that I'm just like, "Come on, press the button already." Like
Yeah.
you didn't have to lose your life. And again, I understand this moves the story forward in order to introduce Rose and her reasoning on, you know, being the type of character that she is, which I love Rose in this movie. I honestly do.
I'm not huge into the writing with Rose. I think she gets a lot more like the hate is completely undeserved.
Yes,
Again,
it is.
you don't like the character, don't attack the actor because the actor had nothing to do with the writing. But I love Rose's quote at the end, which is like, "We don't win by fighting what we hate. We do it by saving what we love." I think that's a great quote. There's just some really good quotes in this movie that represent a lot of what I hope Star Wars is to people and what it should be moving forward. And especially with the amount of hate it all gets.
Yeah, as for Rose, I appreciate her character for the aha moments that she has. You know, I do like the back and forths that she has with Finn. I don't like her like last few lines in this movie
Mhm.
because that last fight I think like kind of contradicts her actions contradict her words in the sense of when she tries to save Finn, she's like, "Oh, well, I'm just gonna crash into him, and if we both die, it's okay." But if he dies by himself, that's not okay. Like, that's the one thing that I'm bothered by. But again, it's just nitpicky stuff. But I
I think that
do,
was like a it wasn't necessarily because she's obviously in love with Finn. I'm still waiting for that, like, did he break up with her or did they just agree to be friends? Like, what happened there?
yeah,
Um, but I think she knew Finn was important to the Resistance and making sure that, like, Poe was okay because Poe and Finn had become really great friends. And so she knew what she needed to do, but then also she didn't want there to be suicide cause because the the door was gonna blow up regardless.
yeah,
Um, and it would just be okay, did we take it out once or did we take it out and lose Finn, but still also lose the door? It wasn't worth it at that point, and she knew she might get hurt pulling Finn out, but it had to be done. So
True. From there though, we uh of course we kind of just jumped around right there, but you know, it's totally fine because we then at that point we get the moment of I believe Hux being no, not Hux, Holdo being introduced.
Yep.
And okay, so I want to genuinely ask you. So we know that a lot of hate towards this movie went around the director for the choices that he made, and then of course the amount of just women representation in this movie was hated for the fact that they were women, uh,
Mhm.
which is completely stupid. I want to know
And that's
your
not
opinion.
hang on. There's not to say that there can't be legitimate criticism of this film, but a lot of
Yes.
the criticism was related to the choices the director made, which okay, fine, but then also why did we need so many women? That was a lot of what was on Twitter and
So,
Instagram and Facebook.
and one of the big things is, and in here, I noticed it more because I wanted to see what all the hate was about. So I was particularly looking at the Holdo Poe relationship and how all that goes down and everything else. So, in my eyes, I see a lot of people hating this because why is there a woman in charge when there's a man right there? Is a lot of the feeling that I get. And even in the movie, you clearly see Poe's like, oh, this is my moment. I'm going to be named the person in charge. And when Holdo is announced, he kind of just like looks around, not really saying anything because he would be a fool to say something. But he does look
Mhm,
disappointed. And then he feels entitled to know everything that she is doing and what her decisions are in where they're going, what's the plan, and everything else. I understand tensions are high. It would be nice to share that kind of thing, but it's a lot of pressure on Holdo herself. So I want to know your perspective on that relationship, the lesson that is learned, and do you feel like anything, if anything, was valid in those criticisms?
I don't think it's at all valid because if you know any sort of command structure, you know, hey, if a person's demoted, then they don't deserve the rank and privilege that was originally associated with them. I've got the resistance rank structure in front of me, and the resistance army was distinguished by red badges and composed of 6 different ranks: lieutenant, captain, major, commander, colonel, and general, in that order of rank structure. And then the resistance navy had the same ranking system as the resistance army. The general rank was replaced by the admiral rank, which was held by Akbar, and the addition of the lieutenant commander rank, which was held by Nien Nunb. So if you look at it, vice admiral, with everybody taken out of command structure, she is the highest ranking person in the resistance navy. If you look at Poe, he was originally third top, which does, based on the Legends X-Wing series, the Rogue Squadron series, you know, hey, once you reach a certain rank, then you've got all the security clearance. And even in regular armies, you know, okay, I've got this, I've got more security clearance than anything.
Hmm.
Poe getting demoted to the second to last rank in the officer structure says a lot, because he went down 2 ranks. He didn't just go down 1. So yes, he was originally up there, but he was now demoted. He doesn't deserve to get to know that information. So when that all blew up and everyone was like, well, he was there and now Leia's out of commission and we've got XYZ happening. Well, no, that doesn't matter, because at the end of the day, your rank and order is what protects you in the military. Following a
Yeah.
chain of command is point blank end of the day responsibility. It's the structure that keeps a military together. And like you know how to follow that at the end of the day. So I don't blame Haldo one bit. And Poe's a cocky bastard. Poe was, I think, what Han was before he met Leia, and was like he's a flyboy. He knows how to fly, and he can't see the bigger picture, which is what Leia struggles to get him to see between the Force Awakens and the Last Jedi. Is she's like, okay, you have to start looking at the bigger picture because Leia's training him to be the replacement, and but he can't wrap his head around the bigger picture. So once he sees what Haldo does and that Haldo actually had a plan, it makes sense. And Haldo's job is to keep everybody calm and to try and make sure that things succeed. Because if everybody's worried about a plan, then nobody's flying the damn ship.
Yeah.
So if you have everybody asking for the plan, that doesn't matter. Poe is a fighter pilot. He doesn't hold any rank of merit anymore in the general structure. Captain means he's the captain of the squad. He doesn't have ships to fly. They're not trying to fly any ships. So his job is to sit on the sidelines and wait until he's told what to do.
No,
Is what
you're
it is.
absolutely right. You're absolutely right. And so like I'm gonna go somewhere really dark, and I understand it's not the complete same, but like Poe legitimately saying like, "Hey, I'm relieving you of command," and jumping in and taking command and everything else. It's like, dude, that's like serious January 6th vibes. Like, chill the hell out, you know? And
And I
like
mean, sometimes
people
that's
holding each other
deserved.
at gunpoint, like a little too far.
Yeah, and to be fair, they did have it on stun.
Yes, yes. That's the difference
It's very
between
different from
reality
our
and fantasy.
good.
Yes.
But I think it's very difficult to ultimately determine, and Poe ultimately wanted what's best for the resistance, and like it really sucks. But I think his heart was in the right place. I think he just needed to kind of get it through his thick skull, and Leia being there, Leia would have helped, but the job of Haldo in that instance was to show that she doesn't that Poe needs to be able to trust other people because Poe only trusts himself to get the job done.
Yeah.
And that's what Haldo's there for, is to show, hey, I can do my job. You don't have to follow me. AKA what I felt a lot of the time.
Well, no, it's just like the rebellion is more than just you. Come on.
Yeah.
Like the rebellion was here before you and it'll be here after you. Is basically his life lesson for this movie. And he does learn it because of his actions at the very end of this movie with Luke Skywalker. But I was just very curious, and I think I looked at this in two different eyes. Of course, with everything with Shadow of the Sith, and of course, really trying to look at a lot of the hate, and I understand that a lot of it was nonsense and crybabies, but I legitimately wanted to see if there was anything that could be an argument, and there really wasn't. Uh, so I just took it as it was. From there, we do get more scenes with Rey and Luke Skywalker. You know, this whole thing with uh, the rebellion sent me, your sister sent me. Like, we really need you. What can we do? He tosses the lightsaber off the cliff or whatever. And we were introduced to the Porgs. Um,
Which the porgs are still adorable. I don't care.
the only thing The only bad thing that to ever come out about the Porgs is there are these plushy Korg or Porg toys that I had at the comic book shop that I was working at the time that you could squeeze and the sound would come out of that speaker of that toy. And we would have random kids running around our store squeezing that toy over and over and over and over again. That
So
got annoying.
this is totally off topic, but that just brought my intent. Like it just made me think of this. When I was 4 or 5, um, I was a huge fan of Winnie the Pooh. This is how off topic this is, y'all. And we were walking through Toys R Us because I think my youngest brother was coming and or it was one of my younger siblings' birthday or whatever, and they were picking out a toy, and there was this massive mound of Tiggers. And my dad bounced one on the head, and me being a little toddler, I just was like, oh yay, and started jumping up and down with him. And he started bouncing all of the heads of the Tiggers. And I kept jumping, and eventually I tripped over my dad's foot and fell face first, broke my 2 front teeth right out. I had
Wow.
fake I had fake front teeth and like I basically had 4 fake teeth until I was in braces and my grown-up teeth were coming in. Totally off topic, but
That
that
sucks.
reminded me of that.
No, but we get to this whole thing. We see the blue milk that everybody is just
Green
absolutely
milk?
disgust.
Excuse
Green
me?
milk, sorry, green milk that we're absolutely disgusted with. I don't understand this. We do know and understand that he grew up as basically a farmer, right? We do know
Mhm.
this. So he probably milked a Eopie or two in his day. So why is it when he milks this alien life form, it's just like, oh, this is why did we get green milk when we could have gotten badass Luke's out? Like, I don't understand it. I don't.
Blue milk
Do
is actually from Banthas.
okay. Okay. Okay.
Um, yeah, I don't like, and this is me going back to Legends again. Mara Jade called him Farm Boy for her entire lifespan in their relationship. Her loving nickname for him was Farm Boy, and so it's a total thing. Um, and so it's like riding a bike. It's exactly how he manages to do the force projection. I mean, he had been studying those Jedi texts and the Sith texts for that matter, because we know that from Shadow of the Sith. That he was
Yep.
just kind of studying any force thing he could get his hands on. And it's like riding a bike. You use the force, very strong naturally, can do things. Oh, I used to milk banthas, and who knows? Maybe he struggled with the sirens because that's what they're called, Thalia sirens. Um, and maybe he struggled milking them initially, but I mean, he's been there for 10, 15 years at this point because The Last Jedi takes place. I can't remember. Last Jedi novel. Oh, nope, that's the wrong Last Jedi. Excuse me. You know what? Screw it. Adaptation. Here we go. I know that's going to be legit. 34 ABY. And Shadow of the Sith takes place 21 ABY. So, math.
I wasn't gonna say
13
anything.
years.
My first guess in my head was 36 ABY. So I'm getting close. I'm
Close.
getting better. I'm getting better. But uh this I did I did like these scenes as well with Ray because we get to see her experience the Force in ways that we had never seen before. In the sense of with Kylo Ren, this like interconnective, like they could see each other conversation. I forgot what they were calling it. Um, I remember for a while people were
Force
calling it.
bond. That's all I know.
Okay, uh, but I still find this very, very intriguing and very fun. Of course, it is quote unquote revealed that uh, Snoke was the one doing it, which is complete BS because it happens again in The Rise of Skywalker. Uh,
Mm,
so it was a legitimate bond between the two of them. But we also get to see her exploration in, and this is where I get really big Shadow of the Sith vibes, when she is in that like just complete black space with the mirror. That
mhm.
reminded me of when Luke Skywalker was doing his meditations in Shadow of the
On
Sith.
Tython?
Yeah, and then when he like opened his eyes, he was just in this like black, just in blackness, you know.
Oh, yeah.
So I was like, oh snap! Like this could be something similar, maybe. I guess I would have to. You know what? I might try and see if Adam Christopher can. I'll see if I can send him a message or tweet at him, see if there's any connection there. But
The
that's
other
exactly.
thing that
Oh, go
the
ahead.
other
Go
thing
ahead.
that I was curious about was because the First Order can track the cruiser through light speed, um, is Comat's hyperspace tracking? Because I wanted to ask this question, but I thought it was too spoilery, for our interview. So was Comat's hyperspace tracking a future project or like a previous project that the First Order's hyperspace tracking was based on? I
Yeah.
have not read the Last Jedi novelization, so I don't know if it's expanded upon in there. But I do know that hyperspace tracking was shown in Rogue One as
Yeah.
like it's one of the projects listed there. So
Yeah. But I really like this. I thought it was a very cool visual with like the thousands of rays, you know, moving the hands, snapping, you know, her wanting to see her parents to only see herself. Uh, I again, we know that things were changed in the sense of like how are we going to get our fans back on board with this whole idea of, you know, the sequel trilogy and everything else. Very disjointed, we know this. But I just, with how we saw that moment with Ray, I really want to know like what was the writing on the wall for everybody at Lucasfilm for where they wanted to take Ray before they were just like, hey, JJ, baby, come back and fix some things, quote unquote, fix some things, you know?
yeah, and I think because people can say, well, this isn't the first time Star Wars has been criticized. Look at the way the prequels were received originally. Um, Social media was not a thing during the prequels. And so, like, to say that the prequels didn't get as much hate, I wouldn't say that. But the immediacy of the hate that The Last Jedi got, it really drew some attention. But I also have to wonder if keeping Leia around after Carrie Fisher's death, may she rest in peace, love her, and seeing the in loving memory of our princess made me cry again.
Hmm.
Um, I wonder if keeping her around changed, like, took too much to manipulate the story
Yeah.
as they went about doing it. Because as much as I love seeing Carrie Fisher on screen and getting The Rise of Skywalker, I still don't think that's the movie she would have wanted to be her final one as Leia. I don't think that at all. So I would be curious to see if J.J. Abrams had had the option to just say, "Oh, Leia died in the opening crawl," what would he have done as a movie instead?
Yeah, for sure.
Because I like we see it, the First Order is very intent on assassination, y'all. So it's not a too far-fetched thing to say Leia was assassinated getting resources for the resistance.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
But we, uh, from there, we see moments again with Finn and Rose. finding Canto Bite. This, and we've talked about, what our thoughts on Canto Bite are altogether. They get the code breaker. Um, how do you feel? And I don't know how much longer we want to keep going, but how do you feel? Because I do feel like the idea of this code breaker, although I love the actor, oh shoot, the actor being
Justin Thoreau or DJ.
yeah, DJ was the character name, yeah. Um, well, actually, Eddie says here, in the chat, I think they needed another film before the finale film because the fans didn't like the direction. I love The Last Jedi and would have loved to see Johnson finish the saga out. And I completely agree. But I believe that, what was the window from when the Last Jedi was in theaters to the announcement of his trilogy? Do you remember?
Oh gosh, I don't know, because Last Jedi was December 15th, 2017. So this InsideTheMagic.net article says on February 13th, 2019, Ryan Johnson confirmed that his trilogy was still slated to happen, dispelling rumors that his trilogy had been canceled. I remember that because that was a night on Twitter to remember if you were on Twitter at that point. Um, oh, Ryan Johnson to create an all new Star Wars trilogy. Lucasfilm was excited to announce that Johnson will create a brand new Star Wars trilogy on November 9th, 2017. So
So
minus 1 month, negative
it
1 month.
it was in within the month that the movie released and the announcement of this trilogy. There is no reason, and I hate this, because again, call me a Marvel fanboy, what have you. I still have my thoughts on those movies, but the idea of what they do is they have a slate and they push it forward. Nothing stops them from moving forward. November 9th, 2017. Yeah.
Right? I'm not reading that wrong.
Yeah, no, it was so. And when was the movie released? It was December,
December
right?
15th, 2017.
Yeah, so it was a month prior to the movie releasing, not after. Sorry, not within the month, but it was a month prior. So Marvel has a slate, and unless something absolutely dramatic happens, I don't think Marvel changes their slate. Again, COVID changed a lot of things, but nothing
Mm-hmm.
changed with that slate other than maybe the release schedule of it. Lucasfilm should have said, "Hey, you're making this new trilogy and you're going to make it no matter what the reception is for your movie coming out." Because that's what you have to do.
And I
Star
think
Wars,
that's still an issue of Kathleen Kennedy and the board of directors being too picky with what they're getting. You know, a director, point blank. And am I am I kind of glad Ryan Johnson didn't make The Rise of Skywalker because then we may not have gotten Knives Out? Yes, I love Knives Out. Knives Out is fantastic. Um, but I think Kathleen Kennedy, as much as she's worked with George Lucas, being with Lucasfilm for so long, I don't know if she's set on the, hey, this director does comedies, this director does this. We need to be able to stick within that field because that's what the director does. Phil and Lord, oh my gosh, I cannot believe that they kicked them off because those are prolific directors who are now directing one of the hottest sequels for Sony that could have been them easily with Solo. And Lucasfilm may regret that. Lucasfilm may not regret that. Lucasfilm has had just way too many director turnovers, and they need to either go, hey, we're gonna stick with the standard director, or we're gonna look at this theme of this genre and go there instead. So
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And I think that hopefully, crossing my fingers, I know. So I will say this because this caused, it didn't cause a lot of bickering. And yes, I will call it bickering. Our GUA chat gets very lively at times. So if anybody is anybody right now, we all know these giant rumors of Henry Cavill coming up at San Diego Comic Con. Seems like new things are starting to maybe put that in doubt. But I have a lovely, hopeful co-host at DC Alliance that really wants it to happen. The same way Hines puts so much hope in a lot of things coming out of DC, I put that kind of hope in the return of Johnson. I really want it to happen because he was able to take a chance on this franchise, and I do believe that it was something that Star Wars needed. I said it in the very beginning of this podcast, and I'll continue to say it until I'm blue in the face. I really do think that just like DC, just like Marvel, Star Wars can have the same feel of Star Wars with being completely different in the way it looks.
yeah,
And I think Johnson was able to do that because regardless of what your feelings are, you look at this movie, it's a Star Wars movie. Point blank.
yep. Eddie says, I don't like when studios have a knee-jerk reaction to critics and audiences when it doesn't go their way. Example, TLJ, Justice League,
And
Suicide. I
yeah,
think
Suicide
Suicide
Squad.
Squad is what.
Yeah,
Um. So yeah, and I completely agree. I think they need to be accepting and kind of move in that direction. Um. So and like you accept what you made, point blank. If like and you put some effort and some pride behind that because you spent almost $500 million probably with marketing on that movie. Put some gumption behind it. And you can like so it really sucked the reception that this got because there was a lot of good like promotional material for it. Like I loved the character posters and everything we got. Um and being a critic myself, like who who stands outside the norm, in some cases, in a lot of cases, with my hot takes. I accept like people aren't gonna agree with me always, but I still stand behind my work for what I do, and I wish Lucasfilm would move in that direction, um, and realize that there's a lot of fans behind it because this movie means a lot to a lot of people. It's just unfortunately the negatives are always going to be louder than the positives.
for sure. 100%. We see that what I feel like every day in our circles. So I understand
Mhm.
the idea of, and it's, of course, it's what also, as we are seeing on the daily as well, is the shit talking is the clickbait stuff, it
Yep.
is definitely the things that grab the clicks and draw more attention to it. So totally agree.
Fight for what you love, not for what you hate. Stop hate watching shit. I think that does us.
Yeah, I think I mean, I guess my thought is final thoughts on this movie because we were going forward and backward and all over the place. We've already talked about some of the major points in the very end, But one thing, so again, I think, well, for the most part, just spitballing, rapid speed, what are some of the things that you didn't like in this movie? And if it were, if it's something that could have been minorly like tweaked, what would you do?
I think really and truly the biggest thing that bugs me is like just like the hyperspace travel. I really like every time I see this movie, I love it more. And you find all these things like Laura Dern saying pew when she shoots the blaster at Carrie Fisher's kid. Oh my gosh.
Oh yeah,
Um
yeah.
and because they couldn't get her to stop saying pew when she like went to shoot. So they just kind of covered it with the smoke. Um it's just it's such a blast and it's such a good addition to the mythology of Star Wars. And I can't wait to see this expanded upon for years to come. And I hope, I mean, you said it, we got our first post sequel trilogy stuff today. So I hope that we continue to move in that direction of exploring these characters because they're really well deserved. Um, Still hate this trilogy as a whole. Doesn't flow, but great things came out of it, I think. And to the haters who floating Leia through space and force projection, it's the mythology. We had only had nine. Fuck, I can't count. We'd only had 7 movies before this came out. You can add things when you're that tight in the timeline. Things existed, and Luke really did. He spent years looking up research and trying to find things about the Force so he could grow his Jedi Academy because he was the only one. And how was he supposed to teach all these people and what was he supposed to teach them? So I really love it and I love that we can still flow in the line of our heroes can make mistakes and that's okay as long as you rectify that. As long as you rectify it, those mistakes are okay.
Exactly. And we've all been the kid in school that needed to do a presentation and wasn't prepared. Luke didn't want to be that kid. So
Yep.
he needed to learn things, okay, people? Um, in all honesty, when it comes to the things that I wish would have changed, um, and I guess this is more so in the idea of what came after The Last Jedi, but Captain Phasma. Uh, we just see her disappear into a ball of flames. Um, you know, I think it's a really cool like way to go in the sense of that badass line that Finn gives her,
Yeah.
rebel scum, and then she just falls or whatever. Absolutely love it. But I feel like her character was a little bit of a waste. Was just a little wasted with such talent behind that helmet or underneath that helmet, should I say, for technical terms. I think that they could have done a lot more with Captain Phasma. I know that there's a book, there's also a comic, uh, and I want to get to those. I really do. Uh, and then for me, as far as like the force projection and stuff, uh, and the death of Luke Skywalker, I don't know if I would have necessarily kept the force projection. I like the touch because it then shows how powerful he is, but like I think it was important for him to be there on his planet because the moment where he's looking at the sun, it's supposed to symbolize the moments of when he would always look at the twin suns on Tatooine. So I
Mhm.
still think it's very, very important that he be there. But yeah, that's just me. So,
I get you.
but
Eddie says the Force can do so many things mystical and physical. I love seeing new Force powers. Yes, my
it's great.
man.
Yes, I think that they're like you shouldn't question space wizards because they're space wizards and they can learn new things. They can do powerful things. It shouldn't shock you when you see a space wizard do something that you've never seen before because they're a fucking space wizard. Like that's what it is. I'm sorry. That's eh, there shouldn't be this much bickering over all of it. But either way,
Yeah.
you can always find me, of course, at fanboyclay on Twitter. Go into the link tree. Go into the bio. You can find my link tree to all the shows that I host: DC Alliance, Batman News Weekly, Ranger Alliance, and of course, right here at Star Wars Alliance. But I do want to say before we leave and everything else, like we said before, we started reviewing this and the comic and everything else. We did get the amazing chance to read Padawan. We can't say anything about it now. It is in the can. We have recorded it. We are going to push that as soon as we get the green light to do so. I think that if you are a fan of Star Wars, you should read the book. If you're a fan of Obi-Wan, you should read the book. But I will put a little asterisk at the point that I don't know if I necessarily knew until Katie said something while we were recording. This is technically a middle grade or a young reader. What is the technical
Young
term?
adult.
Young adult novel. So, and one thing that we say in the review, which is no spoilers, just because it's a young adult novel does not mean that older individuals cannot enjoy it. So, that's all I will say about that. Just a little promotion for something to look forward to.
Y'all, we are going to release 3 episodes the next week.
It's going to get wild.
It is. It's gonna get wild. But 2 of those are going to be the reviews. One is for Padawan, and then the embargo for The Princess and the Scoundrel is actually up next Tuesday as well. So our episode is going to drop on Thursday. Again, you guys don't have to listen to those immediately, but we would absolutely appreciate it if you did, because those mean a lot to us. Those help keep us those numbers are what helps keep us connected with Del Rey and Disney Publishing, to prove that the fan base is there, to get those reviews out, as well as keeps us in the loop for any potential interviews that we can pull. So if you can't listen, if you don't want to listen to them for fear of spoilers, fear not. Those episodes stay in our feeds, which you can find connected on the geekverse.ca websites, but also on your favorite podcatcher of choice. And don't forget to rate and review us. Y'all, you can find me on Twitter and Instagram. It's at Slice of Katie. This show you can find on Twitter and Instagram as well. It's at Star Wars Alliance without the A and the more. Very important. Don't forget it. And then y'all, we will be back next week. We are going to be talking about the final film in the Skywalker saga, The Rise of Skywalker. So if you're ready for more hot takes and the fact that you can love The Last Jedi and The Rise of Skywalker, come back next Wednesday at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, because that's the place to be. And then Princess and Scoundrel Padawan reviews, like we said, will drop as individual episodes, so you guys don't have to worry about any potential spoilers. We may do like a non-spoiler segment about the Princess and the Scoundrel just in the live episode next week, just to kind of give you guys a little bit of insight, like we did for Shadow of the Sith. But yeah, that's it. So I want to thank everyone who's been here in the chat, and I want to thank you for listening or watching whatever time of day you're at. And we will see you all next time. May the force be with you.
See you later.